Sunday. My name is Jess. Welcome to Sweet Slow Sunday. I'm so happy to have you here in my space with me. This is our great opportunity to slow way down. Maybe you haven't taken the time to slow down yet today, or maybe the last few days. Who knows when? We are always on the go, it feels, and doing the things. This is our opportunity to do probably the most important thing we can do, to catch our breath and to reconnect with ourselves, with our heart space, and with the present moment. So that is what we're doing. So even if you had such a crazy time right before this video, right before this moment when you're watching, or you've got stuff coming up after this, we can just lay that all down on the ground right now or on the table right now and just be here for a moment. And the first thing that I am going to invite us to do is to just take a deep breath, to do that very thing, to catch our breath. And so maybe this is the first time you've consciously taken a breath today, and that's okay. We have days like that, right? It gets crazy. But if we can just do this a little bit more often, even if it's just right now, that is a great place to start. And what I like to do is I like to connect to my heart space directly. You can do this by either placing a hand here or sending a conscious thought right to the space of our hearts. And this beautiful part of our bodies is really, truly keeping us anchored into form. It's keeping our spirit filled into this body. And how often do we take the time to say thank you? How often do we take the time to acknowledge the fact that this beautiful organ of ours is performing miracles constantly, all the time, ceaselessly? Keeping us here is a beautiful miracle. And this is our opportunity to say thank you. So send some love to your heart. I'm sending love to mine and to yours. And now we can begin. So before I really get started here, I want to take this moment to read a poem. And I'm going to be doing this every week, sharing a poem. The author will change depending on what it is I feel called to read on that Sunday. But there's two reasons why I'd like to share a poem before we begin anything. And actually, there's probably a billion reasons why, but the two most important. First is that poetry is the language of the heart. It's the language of the soul. It's the language of miracle vision. It's the great noticer and offers us this container of paradox, this container of the fullness of our human experience. And it says, hey, look at this. Hey, look at this. Take this into consideration. Think about this. And that's what we get to do with poetry. We get to see something. We get to feel something. We get to perceive maybe differently than we had before. And so that's what we're going to do here when we are listening to poetry. And the second reason is that out of every type of literature, poetry demands our presence. It really, really requires us to slow down. It requires us to be here and to sit with it. It's not something that we can just rush through and, like as if we're scrolling through social media or something like that. With poetry, we are asked to be present and asked to feel and to pay attention. So maybe you're familiar with reading poetry or listening to poetry, and maybe you're not, and that's okay too. What I'd like us to keep in mind while we're listening or, while I'm reading to you is that you don't always have to, first of all, you don't have to like it. You don't have to like the poem. We don't like everything that we hear, and that's fine. And we don't have to always know exactly what it means or what the author means or anything like that. I know for many of us, we were taught to pull poetry apart until there's nothing left to it, until we've actually grown to dislike it in a way, because we have taken it apart so much that it loses its essence. And so rather than analyze a poem, we are just experiencing a poem. We're experiencing it like any other form of art, where you stand in front of a piece of art and you just contemplate it and you feel what it does to your body. You feel what it does to your heart. You feel the way that it pulls on your emotions. That is how we're going to experience poetry. So while I read each week, that's what I'm just asking of you, is to pay attention to the feelings that are arising in you. No judgment, just observation. And just notice what your body says. Notice what your heart says. Notice if you're even inspired to say something yourself, and maybe write that down. But all of these things are fine. Just be the observer of yourself as you're experiencing poetry. So the first piece that I'm going to read is Naomi Shihab Nye's Kindness. This is one of my favorite authors, one of my favorite poets, and one of my favorite poems that she's written. Kindness. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to mail letters and purchase bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere like a shadow or a friend. And that is it. So that is all for today. Next week, we are going to explore how to start using poetry as a modality for slowing down in your own experience. So these are things that you can do with yourself, for yourself, not just here while I'm talking to you, but during your week, and to take poetry along with you as a practice of slowing down. So I will see you next week.